Hey guys, Brittany here with another bookish bite. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about Under the Oak Tree. So, Under the Oak Tree is a Korean light novel that got turned into a webtoon that I think most people have probably found from like Manta, and I found out from about Under the Oak Tree from like a Facebook ad, I think, and which was for Manta when I started to read the webtoon and or manhwa, whatever you want to call it. And then I found out there was a light novel, but it was a little hard for me to track down the light novel to read. But it was okay because one day I'm walking through Walmart and I see a hardcover copy of Under the Oak Tree, and I was ecstatic because look at this. Oh my god, this is beautiful. I mean, her hair, it's so fiery, the sprayed edges. I like that it's hardcover, but it's like, I don't know if there's any other kids that like grew up in school like in the 2000s or whatever, and like you had hardcover books, but they didn't have the slipcover, and they were like pretty on the outside, and it reminds me of those books I read in like, middle school and stuff, when like publishing them like this was like really popular. But so this pretty, it's beautiful. And then they didn't skip with the second one, also beautiful. This one you can't see as much, but they also have a quote on the sprayed edge, and so that's really cute. It's really fun because when you're reading through the volume and then you find where the quote is in the book, it's like, oh, that's on the edge. And then at the same time that they released the light novel hardback, they released the comic version that most people, at least most Americans, have seen of Under the Oak Tree. And again, pretty. I love the colors and the art. The books colored just like it would be in the in Manta. And then the second one, again, they didn't sleep on making it pretty. Now, we're gonna do some food associated to this. What I decided to do was a soup. Maxie, it's mentioned various times, like, she gets treated shittily by her family. And then when she finally goes with her husband, she starts to eat more, and she does touch on that throughout the story. So it's a little important, her meals and what she is or is not eating, because it really reflects like Maxie's moods and like what she's going through. Like you can see when she's more anxious and she's more stressed out and things like that, she will pick at her food. And then it's also like with her relationship with Riften, because Riften's like, you need to eat more, bitch. Like, why aren't you eating more? Especially in the beginning. He doesn't comment on her eating habits as often, but he does worry about her eating habits a little, and later on. So there's various different soups that get mentioned in the book. It seems like soup is the best. You do hear there's like a roast chicken, there's like rabbit that she eats at one point or whatever. I could have swore to God I read that she ate a rabbit stew or rabbit soup. When I went back through, I couldn't find it. I could have just glossed over it, and I thought about, like, well, maybe I'll make a rabbit stew anyway. But I was like, no, let me touch on, like, what was actually mentioned. So quite often, even though there's different varieties, it's usually some sort of, like, vegetable soup. So what I did was, since the series is set in, like, the 14th to 15th century, obviously it's a fantasy setting of that century, but since it's set in that, I looked back and tried to look up for some 14th or 15th century recipes for soup. And I found a mushroom and leek soup. It's super simple. Light while being warm, and I feel like it's definitely something that, like, Maxie would have eaten, because it's like nobles could easily have this soup, but also peasantry could have this soup, and there's plenty of times that Maxie winds up eating with the knights and things of that nature, so I don't think it would be out of turn to say that she would eat a soup like this. For that soup, what you will need is
1 pound of mushrooms diced, 1 leek sliced thin, 1 tablespoon of butter, half a cup of shredded carrots, a cup of chicken broth, and a powder fort. This is a mixture of different spices. You're gonna get your soup pan nice and hot and add your butter and let that melt down. Once that's melted down, you're going to add your mushrooms, your leeks, and your carrots. Stir everything up a little bit and let it cook down together for about a minute or so. Then add your spices. Stir it together again and let it cook down for a few minutes longer. Once that's simmered for about 3 to 5 minutes, everything's gotten soft, so we are going to add our chicken broth. Now, this was not enough chicken broth, so I wound up adding a second cup. That seemed to be a lot better. So then you just give it a stir, and we're going to bring it up to a simmer.
Okay, while that soup is simmering, now we can get into this book. Under the Oak Tree. It starts with Maximilian. She is a nobleman's daughter. He's a duke, I believe. Duke Croiso. He's an asshole. Let's go that. He's abusive, whatever. It kind of goes with your common tropes nowadays of the, like, abused female main character. And which can be a little annoying and a little overdone. But I think since it doesn't, like, obviously it's touched on in the beginning, but it's not like a whole, like, 20-page backstory about how much she gets abused. I think it makes it a little bit easier to get through. She is the eldest daughter of Duke Croiso, and he has married her off to a knight, Riften. They have their wedding night, and Riften leaves the next morning to go fight in this battle against a dragon that's, like, trying to ravage everything. So he goes on this campaign. He's gone for 3 years. And in that whole 3 years, Maxie is staying with her dad and her, like, shitty stepsister. And Then comes the day where Riften comes back, and that's pretty much where we start our story. Riften comes back to take her back to his castle with him because he has his own territory and his own he's a really revered knight, especially after this campaign because he defeats the dragon in it. He's like really OP knight. Well, her father this whole 3 years has still been abusing her, and he's basically like, I heard that he's gonna marry the princess and divorce you, and you better not let that happen, you ungrateful, you know, whatever. So she's like fucking nervous, right? Because technically she doesn't know this man. She met him for one night and then they had to leave, and then he had to leave. And she's terrified of her father. Well, Riften comes back and it's a little unexpected because he's mad and he's angry and he's brusque, right? But he's also like, he's like, you should have been at my castle this whole time. And she's like, I didn't know I was supposed to be at your castle because her dad's an asshole and he didn't let her go, right? Out from under his thumb. He basically only married his daughter so that he didn't have to go fight this dragon himself. He could send his son in law to go do it. Again, piece of shit, father of the year. So they travel back to his castle and, they start their life. I don't want to like give too crazy many spoilers. There is some smutty things in this book. It's not any dark, crazy smut. It's normal smut, but there's smut in this book. I think it's paced pretty well. I don't mind hearing about like the day-to-day life. That might be a little bit boring for some people, but I would say the biggest con is the classic, the miscommunication, right? It's not miscommunication to the point of you want to rip your hair out because it's like, oh my god, just say the one thing, like it is in like certain animes or certain other books. But it's miscommunication in the form of like not opening up. So Maxie, understandably, has a very low opinion of herself. And she thinks she's not worthy and she's a stuttering, stammering fool. And that she's just like, any day now Riften's gonna be tired of her. So like she better not get too comfortable. Which is really sad. And actually tugged at my heart a lot. There's plenty of times I got teary-eyed from her point of view. But same thing for Riften, because he doesn't really, he's a knight. He's not an emotional guy, you know? You see a little bit more of his cuddly side and all when he's with Maxie, but he still doesn't know. There are instances where, like, it's obvious it's because of a care for her or something, but he's almost like way too overprotective. And he doesn't tell her why. Maxie hates on herself so much in the beginning and has so little confidence in herself that for some people that might be a turnoff. So I can see why that would be a con. But if you read through, she has a lot of development in like standing up for herself and voicing her opinions or showing other like emotions versus just being anxious or being a little content or whatever. She's able to eventually show like her being annoyed or her like being selfish or her like, whereas before in the early part of the story ain't happening. So there is some character growth. So I think for some people that can be a con on how she is in the beginning, that they don't want to continue reading it. But if you continue reading it, it's so important to her like character progression that like you're rooting for her. Like by the end of volume 2, you're like, okay, Like, yes, girl, let's, and she admits her faults too. She's like, I don't think I can do this, but she still tries. Riften is overprotective, like, to the 10th degree. I think, I like me an overprotective male main character, right? Like, I don't want to do shit. But sometimes he's overprotective to the point that it's like actively stunting Maxie's growth when he acts like that. But again, with Maxie's growth, she's noticing that, like, hey, like, he's overprotective to, like, a ridiculous degree. Like, it's becoming suffocating. So I do see it, not at this current moment with what is out, but I see it becoming like a bigger challenge to Maxie. I love how passionate they both are for each other. I guess it is a little codependent in some things, but Maxie and Riften, I do believe, really love each other. They got a map. I love it. Okay? Love it when you got a map. They don't travel too much until the second book, but you can tell, like, it's a rich world. There's, like, inner world lore that's really good because Riften is compared to a, like, mythological champion. He was a real, like, knight back in the day, but then, like, he's basically been, like, canonized now, and, like, they're like, Riften's the reincarnation of him, and, like, um and then, like, the religious practices and stuff, it's so, like, integral to the lore. Like, then, like, all the monsters, it breaks down the monsters, the magic system. So the magic system is more mathematical. So there's, like, actual formulas, and like, you're drawing the circles and whatever to make your magic, and you have to understand, like, some pretty complex math, which Maxie starts to learn magic throughout the series. And it's fun because she doubts herself a lot. She thinks she's pretty stupid, but, like, it's pretty fucking complicated to do magic. So she definitely doesn't give herself enough credit. But yeah, and you get a couple breakdowns too of the magic system from Ruth, who's a sorcerer in the series. There is a spot in the back of the book which is like a Seven Kingdoms, like, handbook that breaks down the different knights and the different type of monsters, and, like, what um category those monsters are in and stuff like that, and how intelligent they are. And I think that's really neat addition. It almost makes me feel like I'm in, like, an RPG, or like straight into an anime or something. Like, um when you get, like, the stats of, like, monsters and stuff. So I think that's an awesome touch. Um while there are, like, some trigger warnings, like with the abuse and um how dark Maxie can get on her thoughts of herself and everything, I like the complexity and the layers in things like that. If that's stuff that's a little too much for you, steer clear. It's okay. Like, you ain't gotta read it. I would love for you to read it, but you don't have to. All in all, I'd give this series a 5 out of 5 for me, personally. And at some point later in the series, I believe we get a Riften POV, and then we can get a little further past that hard, grumpy exterior that Riften has. Okay, now let's see how that soup is doing.
Once it's come up to a simmer, you will stir it and then let it simmer for about 5 to 8 more minutes. Mine has already simmered for that long in this clip, and then we're gonna bowl it up.
Okay, so now that your soup has simmered some, we are going to try it. Um, so looks wise, it it doesn't look very soupy. I thought that there would be more broth. So the original recipe was giving only a cup of chicken broth, and I thought that that was suspicious. But I was like, well, it is like a pound of mushrooms. Mushrooms tend to release water. Maybe like that's where part of the moisture is coming from. No. So I added the second cup of chicken broth, and I didn't let it simmer too long. But it's still kind of like less brothy, more chunky. Um, which, I mean, that can be easily fixed with adding some water or adding some more broth. Like, it's not a huge thing. It smells really earthy. Like, you definitely get that mushroom earthy smell. Um, but then am getting a hint of like the clove. Um, not so much a ginger smell. Don't really smell the leeks. But you're definitely getting like an earthy um and clovey smell. And I try not to put too much clove in there, but well, let's give it a shot. Hmm. Mm. Okay, that's nice. That's nice. Okay. That is I so I don't taste too much of the like individual spices. I'm getting a lot of the cinnamon didn't throw anything off, so that's good. Uh Sometimes I feel like when you add cinnamon to something, it's just not good, especially like a savory thing. But no, there's not too much of that. You're not getting too much of like the ginger or anything. If anything, I think I put a little too much of like regular black pepper in there. I should have maybe scaled that back and then added a little bit more spice berry. But otherwise, like all the flavors are melding good. I like mushrooms. But with how mushroomy it was smelling, I was a little worried it would taste like dirt. Because sometimes, mushrooms can taste a little dirt like. Uh but no, it doesn't. Everything kind of balances really well. Yeah. Outside of that, like maybe needing a little more broth and maybe adding some more broth would cut some of the black pepper too. But I don't see, no, this is really good. And normally Maxie eats her soups with like barley bread or some other type of bread. Usually it's barley. And I can definitely see this as a soup that you would sop with. Like you would take your bread and you would sop the little bit of broth that you do have, or even eat like a bite with the bread. So this is honestly like perfect for that. It's light, it's simple. I'd say it's pretty inexpensive as well. So yeah, I would definitely give this one a try. And if you do, then leave me a comment and tell me how you like it. And also, read the book. If you like this, then, subscribe, like, click the bell, all that stuff. And I will have another video for you next week.